Let's talk to Lance Forman, former MEP and businessman, of course, a man who knows a thing or two about stability and particularly political stability. Lance, a very good morning to you.
Morning to you. Seems that everything's a bit foggy at the moment, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, I said this on Friday when the fog first kind of subsumed most of the River Thames, that it was about as clear as policy coming out of Downing Street. Since then, it's got even worse. You know, we've heard from people saying, even Michael Gove, who I always thought was a relatively sensible individual, you know, talking about things like don't play board games, only go into shops for 15 minutes or less. I mean, it really has become almost comic, hasn't it?
It is a joke. I mean, that's absolutely right. You know, you have to be able to enforce a law. If you're going to pass a law, it has to be enforceable.
Yeah.
And when you get down to this sort of level of detail, it is laughable because it's impossible to enforce these things. And, you know, you're not going to be able to carry people with you. And so there's total disarray. Some people, you know, want to abide by the law. Others think it's completely pointless. And it just, you know, it doesn't make sense. You've got two groups of scientists at the moment as well. They are in total conflict with one another as to, you know, what is actually going on here. And the government only seems to be listening to one side. And I think that is, again, another frustration of the public because, you know, we can hear things through social media. We read other stuff that's being put out there by other scientists, which completely conflicts with what the government's telling us. And so, you know, you can't, you know, everything's so open nowadays, the government can't hide. And so they need to be much more transparent. They need to actually, you know, they need to have all the scientists in there with their, you know, differing opinions. And then the government needs to explain why it's gone down one route or another. But shutting out scientists, shutting out the public, you know, getting down to this level of, you know, telling people how they need to live their lives is just, it's just gone too far. And I think people are, you know, they're starting to resent it. That's why you saw the marches in London.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I wasn't at the marches. I can't tell you whether, you know, the police's actions were in any way justified because I don't know. But whatever was going on, certainly there seems to have been anecdotal evidence at the very least that people were being roughed around and people were being sort of manhandled in such a way that didn't appear to be necessary.
Well, the thing is, you know, if you're going to start banning protests, how do you protest that a protest has been banned?
Yeah.
You know, again, it's, you know, this is not the sort of democracy that, you know, that our grandparents fought for. It's not the sort of democracy that Brits expect.
No.
And, you know, I just don't know what's gone wrong. It seems like this sort of virus has just got into the heads of our entire political class and just changed the way they think.
Right.
And it's got to stop now.
Well, it really does. I mean, as far as your business goes, Lance, I mean, obviously you've been open throughout this pandemic. For those who don't know, you're in the food business and you sell products to all over the world and all over the country. Give us an update on what it's like for you at the moment.
Well, you know, it's been sort of, you know, like a set of scales. So half of our business has completely collapsed because we supply restaurants, hotels, caterers. And indeed, this second lockdown has completely killed that industry. You know, a lot of the West End and the city just, you know, the sort of restaurants, bars and so on will not recover. You know, they can't just suddenly open for a couple of weeks in Christmas. I saw a report this morning, actually, that even though pubs might be allowed to open, they're not going to be able to get hold of beer because all the producers have sort of, you know, they've stopped their production.
Yeah.
So you can't just suddenly turn on the tap and turn it off. On the other side of things, though, we're very fortunate that we also had a home delivery business. And because people have to eat, you know, they might not be eating in restaurants, they still have to eat at home. So we're very busy on that side of things through our online business,
Right.
Forman and Field, delivering food to people's homes. And that's very busy. So we count ourselves quite lucky. But, you know, for all those people in the hospitality trade, and it's not just the trade, you know, you hear politicians saying hospitality has been hit, but it's the supply chain as well. You know, it's their food suppliers, their drink suppliers, the people that launder their napkins and tablecloths.
Yes.
You know, it's the entire industry that's taking a massive hit. And And I would say a lot of it simply won't recover.
No, of course. And what about internationally? Because Brexit, of course, is just around the corner. We're not quite sure how far it is to the corner, but it's soon enough we're going to be hearing that. Internationally speaking, we hear adverts on our own station telling people to prepare for Brexit, to make sure if you're running a business and you're dealing with trade in other countries that you need to sort of get on it and sort yourself out. This is not very helpful at the moment, is it?
I don't think it makes any difference, actually. In some ways, I think it's very helpful because it actually puts all those arguments about Brexit into perspective. You know, if any business has survived COVID, Brexit's going to be a doddle by comparison. You know, it's just a question of filling in one form and you can carry on doing what you were doing before, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, it's only 13% of businesses in the UK that actually do trade directly with the EU, importing or exporting. A lot of those are very big businesses. You know, they import and export internationally, so they'll be dealing with countries that weren't in the EU, and you know they know how to go about it. And, you know, even for smaller firms, you know, they're not transporting goods themselves. They use haulage companies, and the haulage companies have given tons and tons of advice. You're basically getting, you know, the same argument thrown up by people that never wanted this thing to happen, talking about how complicated it's going to be. It's not that hard. You know, we export into the EU and beyond the EU. It's not that much more complicated beyond the EU, and so you know, I think this whole discussion will go away pretty soon, and we'll probably have a deal anyway, so it won't really matter.
Well, indeed, and certainly what we hear from those who, as you say, didn't want it to happen in the first place is the same old claptrap that we heard 4 years ago, which is warning of dire consequences and terrible things that might happen, could happen, will happen in the future, without really any knowledge of any of it.
Well, that's absolutely right. You know, I would say it's almost certain a deal is going to be done. Politicians see no deal as failure on their part, and they can't live with that, even though actually, you know, most businesses will be fine. We've just done a trade deal with Japan. It looks like we are going to do one with the USA as well. Those two economies between them are bigger than the whole of the EU. Right. And we have loads of other countries around the world, you know, Australia, New Zealand. There are countries all over the world lining up to do trade deals with us. So actually, I think in terms of, you know, trade deals and the ease of trading globally, I actually think we're in a very good place. And assuming this deal is done with the EU, the fact that we will have not just a deal with the EU as we've had for the last 40 years, but a trade deals with the rest of the world on top is brilliant. You know, this is really positive stuff, and we're not hearing this enough from people that were anti us leaving. We're actually in a superb position right now.
Yeah, well, that's good news. It's the first piece of good news I've had this week. Mind you, it's only Monday, so I give you the first gold star of the show, Lance. But finally, what about the kind of the political landscape in this country? Because an awful lot of people, particularly the north of England, are very unhappy, having moved their vote from Labour to the Tory party for the first time. Mining communities, former mining communities that were kind of decimated by Margaret Thatcher, voting for the Tories. They're now saying they're never going to do that again, but they're also not very happy with Labour. Is there a chance that this whole kind of experience that we're all having is going to sort of fundamentally change politics in this country?
I hope so. We desperately need it. I mean, it is, you know, the whole political class has been tainted. And so, yeah, you know, however dysfunctional you think the government is now, you know, heaven forbid it would have been Labour in office.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
You know, 10 times worse. But having said that, we desperately need to do something about, you know, our political class. I think what is severely lacking is just any experience of the commercial sector. At the end of the day, you know, what is the point of government other than to defend us? You know, if you want to provide services, you have to fund them. And if you have to fund them, it means you have to understand how to create wealth, because it's only wealth that can fund this thing. And the problem is that none of these politicians have actually worked in the wealth creating private sector. That's where, you know, that underlies all of this. You know, they've gone through from college, they've become political lobbyists, they've, you know, maybe worked as journalists and sort of, then they stood as an MP and sort of worked their way through. But none of them have worked in commerce. And I think that is, you know, that is a severe problem for our entire political class.
Yeah. Or if they have worked in commerce, they've worked at a very high level in somewhere like Goldman Sachs, which is about as akin to working on the high street as working in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Goldman Sachs is just like a giant bureaucracy. They could be another government department. They virtually are a sort of government department.
Yeah.
They've helped a lot of European countries install new prime ministers and so on. So, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, smaller business, 99 point, I think it's 99.8% of businesses in the UK are small, often family businesses, 0 to 10 employees. It's that those sparks of excellence that grow into bigger businesses, but that is where the wealth is created in the UK. It's not in these huge multinational companies that often don't actually even pay any tax in this country. That they hide it off to some part of the world where there's a sort of low tax regime. It's real commercial sort of entrepreneurial experience that I think is what is what's lacking.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Lance, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Lance Forman, who is, of course, former MEP, businessman as well, very optimistic about the Brexit deal that's about to be done, unlike Brendan Chilton, who wasn't quite so optimistic. But I think the main thing that Lance says, and I think he's right about this, is that there could well be a change in the political landscape of this country because the Tory party has made such a hash of running the country. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that without willfully thinking about it. I don't say it off the cuff. I don't say it without any kind of possible remuneration for what might happen afterwards. I certainly don't say it without any consideration for what is going on. But I don't believe the Labour Party is the answer either. So I think we all need to have a very, very hard think about where it is that we want this country to go, how it is that we want this country to get there, and who it is that we want to steward us into that particular place.